Hey, what's up, YouTube? I'm about to do a little something a little different just to get some stuff out of my system. I'm going to do my top 10 things that I hate about movies nowadays, especially the recent stuff that has come out in the last couple of years. I'd say like 3 to 10 years, about approximate. So the first thing I want to talk about is number one, why the long running times. It seems like a lot of these movies nowadays, they're just way too long. The running time is just stretched out way too much, and it makes a movie drag on and on. I mean, let's name a couple of movies that came out last year that were really long. You had The Dark Knight Rises, you had The Amazing Spider-Man, you had Django Unchained, you had Les Miserables, you had Lincoln. I mean, a lot of these movies, they might be good or whatever, but the running times are just excessively long, and I think you could cut out a lot of stuff, especially Dark Knight Rises. You could have cut out at least 10 or 15 minutes or 20 minutes of the movie, take out a couple of characters that were not needed. Really, I just can't stand that about movies. That some movies are just insanely long. I mean, I've seen long movies. I've seen all the Lord of the Rings films and The Hobbit, but those have a lot of, story. But if there's not enough story for over 2 hours, you shouldn't just put filler in there to make it drag out. You should just cut it and just keep going. There's just movies even back in the 2000s. You had the Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian. That was almost 3 hours long. It's no wonder that movie didn't do well. And you had Avatar. Avatar was like almost 3 hours long, and it felt way too long. I mean, I sat there watching the theatrical cut, and I was like, when is this gonna end? It's too much. And there's some movies that are actually interesting if you like put them in two parts. Like if it's 2.5 hours or 3 hours, the first hour and a half could be on one disc or one part of a film, and then the second half could be on another disc or another side of the film. It makes it more, less of a challenge because it's really hard to sit through a 3 hour movie. I've done it, so that's number one, excessive running time. Number two, remakes and reboots. Why is it that all these executives think that it's a good idea to make all these freaking reboots of movies that we did not need in the first place? Once a franchise is done, it's done. You don't need to stretch it out and milk the cow dry. You know what I'm saying? Like we last year we had the reboot of Spider-Man. Now we're gonna have a reboot of Superman again after we had one back in 2006. Then you have reboots of Texas Chainsaw Massacre or remakes or whatever. Then they're remaking classics like RoboCop and Total Recall and all these other movies. I'm like, it's not needed. You don't need to make hours and hours and hours of spend lots of hours of recreating something that was done better in the 80s or the 90s or the 2000s or even in the freaking 70s, for crying out loud. You don't need to do that. Just come up with something original. You don't need to keep rehashing the same movies and put them in today's era, and so audiences can embrace them now. Audiences will most likely embrace the original over the remakes or reboots anyway. And that's number two, reboots and remakes. I'm tired of them. I don't want to keep seeing them. They're just a pain to deal with. Just take a sip of water. Um, number three, that what I don't like about films, the skyrocketed ticket prices. I mean, going to the theater now, it's so expensive to buy a movie ticket. It's ridiculous. I mean, a matinee now in the theater that I live near is about $10. That's not enough. Sometimes full price can go from $13 to $15, and that's a lot of money. With that, you could wait until the DVD or Blu-ray comes out and get it for around the same price and own it, so you don't have to go to the theater and see it. Also, 3D movies, the tickets for that are insanely expensive. They could go from $15 to like $19, especially IMAX 3D. It just makes the movie going experience really bad. And also the prices on popcorn and soda is like $5 for a small. Is ridiculous. I'm not paying those outrageous prices. It's just insane, man. Anyway, that's number three. Overpriced movie tickets and such. Reason number four, a lot of unnecessary sequels. Yeah, Hollywood, we don't want a sequel to everything. We did not need four sequels for Ice Age last year, or Underworld, or Ghost Rider. We don't need this. What we want is a good movie. If you can't give us one good movie, don't try to make the next film better. Or let's make a sequel to it, and it's gonna suck. I mean, this year alone, we got a sequel to the Smurfs coming out. We got a sequel to Well, there's a sequel to Thor I'm looking forward to and Catching Fire, but then there's other sequels that we're not looking forward to. Just a lot of people that I've talked to are just like it's not needed. There's way too many sequels. Way too many movies get sequels that don't need it. I mean, they want already planning sequels for Avatar, and for Snow White and the Huntsman, and for another Spider-Man movie, and the second one hasn't even been released yet. I mean, just enough already. Sequels just some movies don't need sequels. Others do, but some don't. Battleship, thank goodness, will never get a sequel. It's not needed. The sequels they just piss me off when they make sequels to movies that were not even good in the first place. Like they did sequels to Cats and Dogs, and they did sequels to Hoodwinked, which I thought was decent, but it really wasn't needed. They did excessive amounts of sequels for Step Up and Paranormal Activity and Saw and all these other movies. Oh my god. It's just insane. Anyway, sequels have got to go. They got to stop with these sequels. So that's number 4. Number 5, let me see. Movies that are constantly in 3D. I know I mentioned this earlier with the overpriced tickets, but why is it that every other movie under the sun has to be in 3D? March alone, we have like 4 movies in 3D. You got Jack the Giant Slayer, you got Oz the Great and Powerful, and you have G.I. Joe 2 Retaliation. Why is it that these movies need to be converted to 3D? It's not needed. The 3 dimensions is just a gimmick. It'll wear out eventually by the next decade. It makes the tickets prices way too expensive. The 3D glasses hurt your eyes after a couple of hours. And don't even get me started on the IMAX 3D glasses. They're so huge. They're like scuba masks, and I never even wore any of them because they look very uncomfortable. So 3D has got to go. I'm tired of 3D in movies and television and video games. We don't need it. If it's a movie that's computer animated and it's in 3D, it's a 3D animated movie, then that's fine. But don't make the movie a 3D converted movie. It pisses me off, and it makes things way too complicated. Okay, I'm gonna stop here and I'll do a part 2.